More information is beginning to surface about what life will look like for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor now that he lives as a private citizen, and new reports from E! News indicate that King Charles will continue providing him with some form of financial support. But today, we're diving deeper into the question that refuses to disappear: the true story behind Andrew's money, where it comes from, how much still remains, and how he has managed to sustain a lifestyle far beyond what his official income suggests, despite having no job, no public role, and no royal duties for years. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear, expanded view of his declared income, the unexplained funds that continue to raise eyebrows, and the financial inconsistencies that have followed him for decades. So let's start with the one thing Andrew cannot disguise: his only publicly acknowledged source of money is his naval pension. That pension is approximately £20,000 per year, an amount lower than the average full-time salary in Britain. That is, officially, all he lives on. Before his public downfall, he received a generous allowance from the sovereign grant and private financial support from the late Queen. At one point, he was receiving close to £1 million annually from his mother alone. But once she passed and King Charles took over the royal finances, that allowance was completely eliminated. And so, on paper, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is a man surviving on roughly £20,000 a year. The problem: absolutely nothing about his day-to-day lifestyle matches that number. For over 2 decades, Andrew resided in Royal Lodge, a sprawling mansion in Windsor Great Park with around 30 rooms, extensive grounds, and annual upkeep costs so enormous that even billionaires would hesitate before signing on. He paid an upfront fee of around £1 million in 2003 and committed to spending roughly £7.5 million on repairs and renovations. None of that money came from any public fund. And although he has lived in that mansion for years, he paid virtually no rent. According to reporting from The Times, the Crown Estate revealed that Andrew's lease required only a peppercorn rent, which is a purely symbolic amount and often not collected at all. But the truly staggering costs are the ongoing ones. Royal Lodge is unbelievably expensive to maintain. Security alone has been estimated at several £1,000,000 a year at certain points. Even if those numbers have dropped recently, the combined expenses of staff, upkeep, repairs, insurance, heat, garden maintenance, and stables would be overwhelming for anyone with Andrew's declared income. There is simply no world in which a £20,000 pension covers it. Yet Andrew lived comfortably there for decades. A recent investigation uncovered something remarkable: even people within the royal family do not fully understand how Andrew pays for his expenses. According to the report, there is confusion at the highest levels regarding how he has covered property costs, staffing, renovations, and legal bills. This is astonishing for a family that monitors every pound that moves through the royal household. For a king known for carefully watching the financial operations of the monarchy, the fact that Andrew's finances remain largely opaque suggests even the palace cannot fully explain the flow of money supporting his lifestyle. A separate investigation by The Guardian uncovered a series of transactions that simply do not line up. And when you place all these questionable details together, the financial picture becomes even more troubling. One of the most controversial examples is the 2007 sale of Sunninghill Park, the former marital home of Andrew and Sarah Ferguson. A Kazakh buyer paid around £15 million, far above its market value. The buyer never lived in the property. It sat empty for years and was eventually demolished. To this day, there is no logical explanation for why someone would pay an inflated price for a home they never intended to use. That sale provided Andrew with a massive cash infusion, one that essentially kept his lifestyle afloat long after his public income disappeared. It also raised long-standing questions about whether Andrew's connections during his time as a trade envoy introduced him to wealthy individuals who offered private financial assistance in ways never fully documented. Another major mystery involves the Swiss chalet he and Sarah Ferguson purchased in 2014 for around £18 million. The purchase became messy, with delays, payment disputes, and legal threats from the seller. Even after the sale, questions lingered about how Andrew could afford such a property when he had no job and no commercial income. Even selling Sunninghill Park does not completely bridge the financial gap. And that gap only grows when you consider Andrew's actual cost of living. Running a large estate requires at least £200,000 a year in staff alone. Maintenance and repairs reach 6-figure sums easily. Horses and stables cost tens of thousands annually. Legal fees in the past few years could easily total several million. Add to that travel, vehicles, clothing, security, and day-to-day living expenses, and Andrew would need an estimated £20,000 to £30,000 every month to maintain the lifestyle he once enjoyed. Yet his official pension brings in less than £2,000 a month. The math simply does not add up. Experts who have studied Andrew's finances repeatedly circle back to the same possibilities: private support from the late Queen's personal wealth, discreet funding from long-standing royal family reserves, financial benefits tied to relationships he formed during his time as a trade envoy, gifts or unusual transactions from wealthy foreign acquaintances, and investment income that has never been made public. None of these explanations are confirmed, but they are the only narratives that even begin to match the spending visible in his life. Several insiders have claimed that King Charles has been tightening these financial pipelines significantly since becoming monarch. And that leads to the crisis the palace can no longer ignore. Officials know exactly how much money Andrew has left because he was required to provide financial documentation in order to justify keeping Royal Lodge. This year, he could not provide what was requested. That is likely one of the reasons he is being moved into a much smaller property on the Sandringham estate. The new home is cheaper to maintain, easier to secure, and allows the palace to keep a closer eye on his activities. In many ways, the move creates a more controlled environment, one where Andrew's lifestyle cannot continue to exceed his real, available income. It also solves a long-term problem. Royal Lodge cannot remain tied up by someone whose finances are unstable and whose controversies show no sign of fading. Public estimates place Andrew's net worth at around £3.7 million. While that number sounds substantial, it is shockingly small when weighed against the scale of expenses required to maintain his previous lifestyle. Legal fees alone could drain that in months. Property maintenance could drain it in years. And one unexpected crisis could erase it completely. And keep in mind that net worth often includes assets, not cash. If most of Andrew's remaining wealth is tied up in items he cannot quickly sell, his financial situation is even more fragile than it appears. One of the most dramatic financial moments came in early 2022, when Andrew reached a settlement in the lawsuit filed by Virginia Giuffre. The amount was never formally disclosed, but numerous reputable outlets and sources close to the negotiations estimated it to be around £12 million, including damages and a donation to her charity. £12 million, for a man with no income, no job, no commercial career, and only a modest personal net worth, sparked enormous questions. Multiple royal correspondents confirmed that the late Queen personally stepped in to help cover the settlement. Some believe she paid most of it. Others believe she paid all of it initially and later recovered part of the sum from the sale of Andrew's assets. Regardless of the exact arrangement, insiders admitted privately that Andrew could not afford the settlement on his own. That decision reportedly infuriated King Charles, who felt Andrew needed to face consequences without being rescued financially again. Many believe it was one of the major reasons Charles withdrew Andrew's remaining financial support once he became king. In short, the settlement did not just destroy Andrew's public life. It exposed just how strained his private finances had already become. Now I want to hear from you in the comments. Do you believe there are hidden accounts? Who do you think has been quietly supporting Andrew financially? Does the palace know more than they're letting on? Or has Andrew finally reached the point where the true state of his finances can no longer be disguised? Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. I will be covering every chapter of this ongoing story. Thank you for watching.